Ruth Ellis was the last woman executed in the UK, hanged on July 13, 1955. Her case significantly influenced the movement to abolish capital punishment. Thousands of people signed petitions against her execution, and she received support from celebrities like crime writer Raymond Chandler. Following her death, the campaign for the abolition of the death penalty, led by Violet van der Elst, gained traction. In February 1956, a bill was introduced in Parliament but was rejected by the House of Lords. In 1957, Parliament passed the Homicide Act, restricting the death penalty to specific types of murder. In November 1965, a 5-year suspension of the death penalty was enacted, leading to its permanent abolition in December 1969. Ruth Ellis's execution played a crucial role in this legal change. Ruth Ellis was born Ruth Hornby in Rhyl, North Wales, on October 9, 1926. She was the fourth of 6 children born to Arthur and Bertha Hornby. The family moved to Basingstoke, Hampshire, and later to Southwark, South London, in 1941. At 17, Ruth worked as a photographer's assistant, visiting dance halls where she met Canadian and American troops. She became involved with a French-Canadian soldier named Claire, who proposed, but her mother discovered he was already married. Ruth gave birth to a son, Andrea Claire, on September 15, 1944, just before her 18th birthday. Ruth often left her son in the care of her mother and older sister, while she sought work, including nude modeling. At 19, she started working as a hostess at the Court Club in Mayfair, owned by property developer and pimp Morris Conley. She earned over £20 a week and additional money through other means after Conley took his cut. During this period, Ruth became pregnant by a customer and had an abortion. At the Court Club, she met George Ellis, a 41-year-old dentist. They married in November 1950, but George's alcoholism led to a volatile and violent relationship. Their daughter Georgina was born in October 1951, but the marriage soon ended. Ruth returned to her parents with her children and resumed hostessing at the newly refurbished Court Club, now called Carol's. There, she met Desmond Cusson and David Blakely, who would shape her fate. On her 27th birthday, Ruth was promoted to manageress of the Little Club in Knightsbridge, earning a substantial income and living rent-free above the club. David Blakely, a would-be racer, moved in with her, despite having a fiancée named Linda Dawson. Desmond Cusson, a company director, also pursued Ruth, offering stability and support for her and her children. However, Ruth became obsessively in love with Blakely, despite their volatile and often violent relationship. Blakely's abusive behavior, including public ridicule and physical violence, deeply affected Ruth. After losing her job due to Blakely's behavior, Cusson supported Ruth financially and emotionally. In early 1955, Ruth discovered she was pregnant, but Blakely's violent actions caused her to miscarry. Despite his abuse, Ruth remained obsessed with him. Their relationship continued to be tumultuous, with frequent fights and reconciliations. On Easter Sunday, April 10, 1955, Ruth tracked down Blakely outside the Magdala Tavern in Hampstead. She shot him 5 times, killing him instantly. Ruth was arrested at the scene and confessed to the crime, stating she intended to shoot Blakely. Her trial began on June 20, 1955, and despite her defense team's efforts to argue provocation, Ruth's admission of intent sealed her fate. The jury found her guilty, and she was sentenced to hang. Ruth's execution drew widespread public attention, with many advocating for clemency. Despite this, her execution proceeded as scheduled. On July 13, 1955, Ruth Ellis was executed by hanging. Her case remains a significant part of British legal history, symbolizing the end of capital punishment for women in the UK. Ruth Ellis's early life was marked by hardship and tragedy. Born into a large family, she faced the challenges of moving frequently and living in impoverished conditions. Despite these difficulties, Ruth managed to find work and make a life for herself. Her relationships, particularly with George Ellis and David Blakely, were tumultuous and fraught with violence. George Ellis, although initially providing a semblance of stability, soon revealed his true nature as an abusive alcoholic. Their marriage quickly deteriorated, leaving Ruth to fend for herself and her children. Her involvement with David Blakely was even more destructive. Blakely's charm and allure captivated Ruth, but his abusive behavior and infidelity pushed her to the brink. Ruth's involvement with Desmond Cusson further complicated her life. Cusson, although supportive, could not provide the emotional fulfillment Ruth sought from Blakely. The love triangle between Ruth, Blakely, and Cusson created a volatile and dangerous situation. The events leading up to Ruth's crime were a culmination of years of abuse, betrayal, and desperation. Blakely's treatment of Ruth, coupled with her obsessive love for him, led to a breaking point. On that fateful Easter Sunday, Ruth's actions were driven by a mixture of rage, heartbreak, and a desire for revenge. The trial of Ruth Ellis was swift and decisive. Despite the defense's attempts to argue provocation and diminished responsibility, Ruth's own admission of intent sealed her fate. The jury's verdict of guilty, without a recommendation for mercy, reflected the harsh attitudes towards women in crime at the time. Ruth's execution was met with public outcry and calls for clemency. Despite widespread support and numerous petitions, her execution proceeded. The case of Ruth Ellis remains a powerful symbol of the fight against capital punishment and the need for justice and compassion in the legal system. In the years following Ruth's execution, her story continued to resonate. The movement to abolish the death penalty gained momentum, leading to significant legal reforms. The Homicide Act of 1957 and the eventual abolition of the death penalty in 1969 were direct results of the public's reaction to cases like Ruth's. Ruth Ellis's life and death serve as a reminder of the complexities of human relationships and the devastating impact of domestic abuse. Her story highlights the need for a compassionate and just legal system that considers the circumstances and motivations behind criminal actions.